Question 1. Performance analysis shows that a university staff member's relative is applying for admission to Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University and has expressed anxiety about the entrance examination. The staff member has access to general information about the examination's format and the types of skills assessed, but not specific questions or answers. The staff member is considering offering advice to their relative on how to prepare, which might indirectly benefit them in the examination. What is the most appropriate course of action for the staff member? Strictly adhering to the regulatory framework, laws, and guidelines for the Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University entrance exam. Option A. Offer to review the relative's practice materials and provide feedback, suggesting areas where they might need to improve their understanding of general academic concepts. Option B. Share general insights into the examination's difficulty and the importance of thorough preparation, without revealing any specific content or format details. Option C. Decline to offer any advice or assistance, citing potential conflicts of interest, and direct the relative to official university resources for admission information. Option D. Provide general advice on study strategies and areas of focus that align with the known examination format, emphasizing that this information is publicly available and intended to help all applicants prepare effectively. Correct answer is D. Provide general advice on study strategies and areas of focus that align with the known examination format, emphasizing that this information is publicly available and intended to help all applicants prepare effectively. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to navigate the ethical and regulatory landscape of academic admissions at Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University, specifically concerning the integrity of the entrance examination process. The challenge lies in balancing the desire to support a relative with the absolute requirement to uphold fairness, transparency, and adherence to the university's established admission regulations. Misjudging this situation could lead to severe ethical breaches, reputational damage to the university, and unfair disadvantages for other deserving candidates. The correct approach involves strictly adhering to the Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University's entrance examination regulations and the university's ethical guidelines for staff. This means recognizing that any attempt to influence the examination process for a relative, even indirectly, constitutes a conflict of interest and a violation of academic integrity. The university's regulations are designed to ensure a merit-based selection process, free from bias or undue influence. Upholding these regulations is not merely a procedural requirement, but an ethical imperative to maintain the credibility and fairness of the university's admissions. An incorrect approach would be to provide the relative with any form of advance information or preferential treatment related to the examination. This action directly contravenes the principle of equal opportunity and the spirit of fair competition that underpins university admissions. Such behavior would be a clear violation of the university's academic integrity policies and potentially its code of conduct for employees, leading to disciplinary action and undermining the trust placed in the individual by the institution. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the request, offering no guidance or clarification on the examination process, while privately harboring a desire to help the relative. This passive approach, while not actively compromising the exam, still fails to uphold the ethical duty of transparency and fairness. It creates an environment where favoritism might be perceived, even if not explicitly acted upon, and misses an opportunity to reinforce the importance of legitimate preparation and adherence to university rules. The professional decision-making process in such situations should begin with a clear understanding of the university's admission policies and ethical codes. The individual must first identify any potential conflicts of interest. If a conflict exists, the next step is to recuse oneself from any involvement that could be perceived as biased or influential. The professional should then communicate clearly and ethically, adhering strictly to official university procedures and guidelines when interacting with candidates or their families, ensuring that all information provided is publicly available and applied equally to all applicants. Question 2. Strategic planning requires a thorough assessment of the Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University entrance examination to ensure its fairness and effectiveness in identifying qualified candidates. Which of the following approaches best addresses the implementation challenge of identifying and mitigating potential biases within the examination process, in strict adherence to the university's regulatory framework? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive review of the examination content and administration procedures, focusing on cultural relevance, clarity of questions, and impartiality of administration, with the aim of identifying and rectifying any potential biases that could disadvantage specific applicant groups. Option B. Rely on feedback from a small, informal group of faculty members to gauge the perceived fairness of the examination, without a systematic analysis of the content or administration. Option C. Implement a rapid, superficial review of the examination materials to quickly identify any obvious errors, prioritizing speed over a detailed examination of potential biases. Option D. Increase the overall difficulty of the examination questions to create a more rigorous selection process, assuming that higher difficulty inherently leads to a fairer assessment of academic potential. The correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive review of the examination content and administration procedures, focusing on cultural relevance, clarity of questions, and impartiality of administration, with the aim of identifying and rectifying any potential biases that could disadvantage specific applicant groups. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's strategic goals with the ethical imperative of ensuring fair and transparent admission processes, all within the specific regulatory framework of Imam, Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University. The challenge lies in identifying and mitigating potential biases that could undermine the integrity of the entrance examination, a critical component of the university's student selection. Careful judgment is required to uphold the university's reputation and its commitment to academic excellence. The correct approach involves a comprehensive review of the examination content and administration procedures to identify and address any potential biases that might disadvantage certain groups of applicants. This includes ensuring that the questions are culturally relevant and do not inadvertently favor specific backgrounds or prior educational experiences that are not universally accessible within the intended applicant pool. Furthermore, it necessitates establishing clear, objective criteria for evaluation and ensuring that the examination process is administered impartially, adhering strictly to the guidelines set forth by Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University for its entrance examinations. This aligns with the university's commitment to merit-based admissions and its responsibility to provide equal opportunities to all qualified candidates. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on increasing the difficulty of the examination without a corresponding review for bias would fail to address the core issue. This could inadvertently create new barriers for qualified students who may not have had access to specific types of preparation, thus undermining the principle of equitable access. Another incorrect approach that involves relying on subjective assessments or anecdotal evidence to identify potential biases, rather than systematic analysis, would lack the rigor required to ensure fairness and could lead to arbitrary decisions. Finally, an approach that prioritizes speed of implementation over thoroughness, such as a superficial review of the exam content, risks overlooking subtle but significant biases, thereby compromising the integrity of the admission process and potentially violating the university's own internal regulations on examination quality and fairness. Professionals tasked with this responsibility should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the university's mission and its specific regulatory requirements for entrance examinations. This framework should involve a systematic process of identifying potential risks, evaluating their impact, and developing mitigation strategies. It requires consulting relevant university policies, seeking input from diverse stakeholders, and conducting thorough, evidence-based analyses. The ultimate goal is to ensure that the examination process is not only effective in identifying capable students, but also fair, transparent, and compliant with all applicable regulations and ethical standards. Question 3. Stakeholder feedback indicates a concern that one applicant for a highly competitive program may have misrepresented certain extracurricular achievements on their application, potentially inflating their profile beyond what is verifiable. The admissions committee needs to address this feedback, while adhering strictly to Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University's admission regulations and ethical standards. Which of the following actions best reflects the appropriate professional response? Option A. Conduct a thorough review of all submitted documentation, cross-reference the claimed extracurricular achievements with official records or verifiable sources, and consult the university's admission policy to determine the appropriate course of action based on the findings. Option B. Forward the feedback to the applicant's previous educational institution for an independent assessment of their character and the veracity of their application details without further university investigation. Option C. Immediately disqualify the applicant from consideration due to the serious nature of the alleged misrepresentation, as per the university's zero-tolerance policy for dishonesty in applications. Option D. Accept the applicant's stated achievements at face value to avoid any perception of bias or unfairness, prioritizing the applicant's right to be considered based on their submitted information. The correct answer is A. Conduct a thorough review of all submitted documentation, cross-reference the claimed extracurricular achievements with official records or verifiable sources, and consult the university's admission policy to determine the appropriate course of action based on the findings. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the need to balance the university's commitment to academic integrity with the practicalities of managing student admissions, particularly when faced with potentially misleading information. The core of the challenge lies in discerning genuine academic merit from attempts to circumvent the established admission criteria, all within the framework of Imam, Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University's specific regulations and ethical guidelines. Careful judgment is required to ensure fairness to all applicants and uphold the reputation of the university. The correct approach involves a thorough, evidence-based review of the applicant's qualifications, cross-referencing information provided with official documentation and university admission policies. This approach aligns with the university's commitment to admitting students who meet its academic standards and adhere to its admission procedures. Specifically, it upholds the principle of transparency and fairness in the admissions process, ensuring that all applicants are evaluated on the same objective criteria. This is consistent with the spirit of academic governance and the university's responsibility to maintain high educational standards. An incorrect approach that involves accepting the applicant's claims without independent verification would be a failure to uphold the university's admission regulations. This could lead to admitting unqualified students, undermining the academic rigor of the university, and potentially creating an unfair advantage for this applicant over others who have met the requirements through legitimate means. Another incorrect approach, which is to immediately reject the applicant based on suspicion without a proper investigation, would be a failure of due process. While vigilance is necessary, an unsubstantiated rejection can be discriminatory and may violate principles of fairness and opportunity, especially if the initial feedback was based on rumor rather than concrete evidence. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Acknowledging the stakeholder feedback and its potential implications. 2. Initiating a fact-finding process to gather all relevant information and documentation. 3. Consulting the university's official admission policies and any relevant internal guidelines. 4. Evaluating the gathered information against the established criteria. 5. Making a decision based on objective evidence and adherence to regulations, ensuring that the process is fair, transparent, and defensible. Question 4. The audit findings indicate potential irregularities in the procurement process for a significant university project, raising concerns about compliance with university financial regulations and potentially impacting the accuracy of reported expenditures. The university administration expresses urgency in finalizing the audit to avoid project delays and requests the audit team to focus on confirming the administration's initial assessment that the issues are minor and procedural. What is the most appropriate course of action for the audit team in this situation, adhering strictly to the regulatory framework and guidelines applicable to Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University? Option A. Conduct further detailed audit procedures to independently verify the nature and extent of the procurement irregularities, document all findings, and communicate them to the university's audit committee or equivalent governance body for their review and decision. Option B. Immediately report the potential irregularities to external regulatory bodies without first conducting a thorough internal investigation and communicating with university governance. Option C. Accept the university administration's assurance that the issues are minor and procedural and proceed to finalize the audit report based on their assessment to avoid project delays. Option D. Focus solely on the financial statement impact of the identified issues, disregarding the procedural compliance aspect to expedite the audit process. The correct answer is A. Conduct further detailed audit procedures to independently verify the nature and extent of the procurement irregularities, document all findings, and communicate them to the university's audit committee or equivalent governance body for their review and decision. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's immediate need for financial reporting accuracy and the auditor's obligation to maintain independence and professional skepticism. The audit findings, if significant, necessitate a thorough and objective investigation, which can be complicated by the university administration's desire to expedite the process and potentially downplay the findings. The auditor must navigate this pressure while adhering strictly to the ethical and professional standards governing auditors in Saudi Arabia, as dictated by the Saudi Organization for Certified Public Accountants, SOCPA, and relevant university regulations. The correct approach involves the auditor meticulously documenting all findings, performing further audit procedures to corroborate or refute the initial observations, and communicating these findings clearly and objectively to the appropriate university governance bodies, such as the Audit Committee or the Board of Trustees, as per SOCPA standards on communication with those charged with governance. This ensures transparency, accountability, and allows for informed decision-making by the university's leadership. The auditor's independence and professional skepticism are paramount, requiring them to resist any undue influence or pressure to alter their findings or conclusions. An incorrect approach of immediately accepting the administration's explanation without further investigation would violate the principle of professional skepticism, a cornerstone of auditing. This failure to exercise due diligence could lead to material misstatements remaining undetected, thereby misleading stakeholders and undermining the credibility of the financial statements. Another incorrect approach, that of prematurely concluding the audit and issuing an unqualified opinion based on incomplete evidence, would be a direct breach of auditing standards and professional ethics, potentially exposing the auditor to disciplinary action and legal repercussions. Furthermore, failing to communicate the findings to the appropriate governance level, instead solely relying on the administration's assurances, bypasses established oversight mechanisms and demonstrates a lack of professional integrity and adherence to reporting protocols. Professionals facing similar situations should employ a structured decision-making process. This involves 1. Identifying the core issue and potential conflicts of interest or ethical dilemmas. 2. Recalling and applying relevant professional standards and university policies. 3. Gathering all necessary evidence and performing thorough analysis. 4. Communicating findings and concerns clearly and objectively to the designated authorities. 5. Documenting all steps taken and decisions made. 6. Seeking guidance from senior colleagues or professional bodies if uncertainty persists. The guiding principle is always to uphold professional integrity, independence, and the public interest. Question 5. Governance review demonstrates that during a recent entrance examination administration at Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University, a proctor observed a candidate exhibiting behavior that strongly suggested the use of unauthorized external aids. The proctor documented the observation, but did not immediately intervene or confiscate any materials. The university's examination regulations stipulate a clear process for handling suspected academic misconduct. Considering these regulations and the ethical imperative to maintain examination integrity, what is the most appropriate immediate course of action for the proctor and the examination administration? Option A. The proctor should ignore the observed behavior, assuming it might be a misunderstanding, to avoid disrupting the examination environment and potentially causing undue stress to the candidate. Option B. The proctor should verbally warn the candidate about the observed behavior and instruct them to cease immediately, without further documentation or reporting, to resolve the issue informally. Option C. The proctor should discreetly inform the chief invigilator, who will then initiate the university's formal procedure for investigating suspected academic misconduct, which may involve documenting the incident, securing any potential evidence if permissible by policy, and reporting to the designated examination committee for a thorough review. Option D. The proctor should immediately confront the candidate, confiscate any suspected unauthorized materials, and dismiss the candidate from the examination hall to prevent further potential cheating. The correct answer is C. The proctor should discreetly inform the chief invigilator, who will then initiate the university's formal procedure for investigating suspected academic misconduct, which may involve documenting the incident, securing any potential evidence if permissible by policy, and reporting to the designated examination committee for a thorough review. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the ethical obligation to uphold academic integrity and the university's commitment to fair assessment, as guided by the Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University's regulations for entrance examinations. The core difficulty lies in balancing the need to address potential irregularities with the imperative to ensure a fair and unbiased evaluation process for all candidates. Hasty or improperly handled investigation could unfairly disadvantage a candidate or, conversely, allow an unqualified individual to gain admission, undermining the university's standards. The correct approach involves a systematic and evidence-based investigation that adheres strictly to the university's established procedures for handling suspected academic misconduct during entrance exams. This entails gathering all relevant information, documenting observations meticulously, and presenting findings to the designated disciplinary committee or authority within the university. The ethical justification rests on the principles of fairness, due process, and the pursuit of truth. By following established protocols, the university ensures that any decision is based on objective evidence and that the candidate has an opportunity to respond, thereby upholding academic integrity and the credibility of the examination process. An incorrect approach would be to immediately disqualify the candidate based on suspicion alone, without a thorough investigation or adherence to university procedures. This violates the principle of due process and could lead to an unjust outcome. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the observed anomaly, which compromises academic integrity and the fairness of the examination for other candidates who adhered to the rules. A third incorrect approach might involve an informal or biased resolution, such as accepting a verbal explanation without corroborating evidence, which undermines the university's commitment to objective assessment and could set a precedent for future misconduct. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making process that prioritizes adherence to established university regulations and ethical guidelines. This involves 1. Recognizing the potential issue and its implications for academic integrity. 2. Consulting the relevant university policies and procedures for handling examination irregularities. 3. Gathering and documenting all pertinent facts and evidence objectively. 4. Reporting the matter through the appropriate channels for formal investigation. 5. Ensuring that any subsequent actions are taken in accordance with the university's disciplinary framework, guaranteeing fairness and due process for all involved. Question 6. The risk matrix shows a moderate likelihood of academic underperformance among first-year students due to potential adjustment difficulties. During a routine academic advising session, a student appears unusually withdrawn, avoids eye contact, and their responses to questions about their coursework are vague and unconvincing, suggesting a level of distress beyond typical academic concerns. What is the most appropriate course of action for the academic advisor? Option A. Advise the student to focus solely on their academic tasks and suggest they seek external help if personal issues are interfering with their studies. Option B. Gently inquire if the student is experiencing any personal difficulties that might be affecting their studies and offer to connect them with university counseling services and academic support resources. Option C. Document the student's withdrawn behavior in their academic file without further interaction, assuming it is a temporary issue. Option D. Directly ask the student to disclose any personal problems they are facing, emphasizing that their academic performance is suffering as a result. Correct answer is B. Gently inquire if the student is experiencing any personal difficulties that might be affecting their studies and offer to connect them with university counseling services and academic support resources. Explanation. This scenario presents a challenge in balancing academic integrity with the university's commitment to fostering a supportive learning environment. The core difficulty lies in identifying the appropriate response when a student exhibits signs of academic distress that could stem from personal issues, without overstepping boundaries or violating privacy. The university's regulatory framework, as implied by an entrance exam context, would likely emphasize adherence to ethical guidelines for student interaction and support, alongside academic standards. The correct approach involves a sensitive and supportive intervention that prioritizes the student's well-being while upholding academic expectations. This entails recognizing the potential underlying issues, offering resources, and documenting the interaction appropriately. This aligns with ethical principles of care and professional responsibility, ensuring that students receive help without compromising the integrity of the academic process. The university's guidelines would likely mandate a process of referral to specialized support services rather than direct personal counseling by academic staff. An incorrect approach would be to ignore the student's distress, which fails to uphold the university's duty of care and could exacerbate the student's academic difficulties. Another incorrect approach would be to directly confront the student about perceived personal problems, which is an invasion of privacy and outside the scope of an academic advisor's role, potentially causing further distress and damaging the student-advisor relationship. Finally, an approach that focuses solely on academic performance without acknowledging the student's visible distress would be ethically deficient, as it neglects the holistic needs of the student. Professionals should adopt a decision-making process that begins with observation and empathetic listening. The next step is to assess the situation against university policies and ethical guidelines. If signs of distress are observed, the professional should offer support and direct the student to appropriate university resources, such as counseling services or academic support centers. Documentation of the interaction and any referrals made is crucial for accountability and continuity of care. This systematic approach ensures that student welfare is addressed responsibly and within established professional boundaries. Question 7. Investigation of an applicant's admission to Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University's entrance examination reveals they possess a strong academic record and relevant extracurricular achievements, but lack a specific, officially recognized certification that is listed as a mandatory requirement in the examination's published guidelines. The applicant argues that their practical experience and a portfolio of completed projects demonstrate equivalent proficiency. What is the most appropriate course of action for the admissions officer to take, strictly adhering to the university's entrance examination regulatory framework? Option A. Advise the applicant that the mandatory certification is non-negotiable and they must obtain it before reapplying in a future cycle, while also informing them of any potential pathways within the university's regulations for demonstrating equivalent proficiency if such pathways exist. Option B. Suggest the applicant seek an alternative educational institution that may have more flexible admission requirements for their specific qualifications. Option C. Recommend the applicant for admission based on their perceived potential and practical experience, bypassing the formal review of the missing certification. Option D. Immediately reject the application due to the missing mandatory certification, as per the strict interpretation of the published guidelines. The correct answer is A. Advise the applicant that the mandatory certification is non-negotiable and they must obtain it before reapplying in a future cycle, while also informing them of any potential pathways within the university's regulations for demonstrating equivalent proficiency if such pathways exist. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's established admission policies and the potential for a candidate to possess exceptional, albeit unconventional, qualifications. Navigating this requires a careful balance between adhering to established procedures and recognizing the value of diverse talents, all within the framework of Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University's specific entrance examination regulations. The challenge lies in determining whether to strictly enforce the written policy or to explore avenues for exceptional consideration, ensuring fairness and upholding the integrity of the admission process. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the candidate's submitted documentation, cross-referencing it with the specific requirements and any provisions for exceptional circumstances outlined in the Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University's entrance examination regulations. This approach is correct because it prioritizes adherence to the university's established legal and regulatory framework for admissions. It acknowledges that, while the candidate may have unique strengths, the admission process is governed by specific rules designed to ensure fairness and standardization. By seeking clarification from the relevant admissions committee or department, the process ensures that any deviation from standard procedure is formally considered and approved according to the university's internal governance, thereby maintaining compliance with its own regulatory guidelines. An incorrect approach would be to immediately reject the candidate based solely on the absence of a specific document, without exploring any potential equivalencies or provisions for exceptional cases within the university's regulations. This fails to acknowledge that university regulations may allow for flexibility or alternative forms of evidence for certain qualifications. Another incorrect approach would be to bypass the formal admissions review process and grant admission based on a personal assessment of the candidate's potential, without consulting the established procedures or seeking approval from the designated authorities. This undermines the regulatory framework and introduces bias, potentially compromising the integrity of the entire admission system. A third incorrect approach would be to advise the candidate to simply reapply in a future cycle, without investigating if their current qualifications could be assessed under existing policies, thereby failing to provide a comprehensive and supportive response within the current application window. Professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding the specific regulatory framework governing the situation, in this case, Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University's entrance exam regulations. 2. Thoroughly reviewing all submitted documentation and identifying any discrepancies or missing elements. 3. Consulting the relevant policies and guidelines for any provisions related to exceptional circumstances, equivalencies, or alternative qualifications. 4. Seeking formal clarification or guidance from the appropriate university authorities or admissions committee if ambiguity exists. 5. Documenting all steps taken and decisions made to ensure transparency and accountability. Question 8. Strategic planning requires a comprehensive assessment of admission criteria to ensure alignment with the university's mission and enrollment targets. Considering the ethical imperative of fair selection and the specific regulatory framework of Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University, which of the following approaches best addresses potential biases in the admission process while supporting strategic enrollment goals? Option A. Rely exclusively on historical admission data to inform future selection processes, believing that past trends accurately reflect the most suitable candidates for the university. Option B. Implement superficial diversity initiatives, such as quotas based on broad demographic categories, without a deeper analysis of the underlying reasons for disparities in applicant pools or success rates. Option C. Prioritize meeting established enrollment targets by relaxing certain admission standards for underrepresented groups to quickly boost numbers, assuming this will naturally lead to a more diverse student body. Option D. Conduct a thorough review of all admission criteria and selection methodologies to identify and mitigate any potential biases that could inadvertently disadvantage applicants, ensuring that the process remains meritocratic and equitable. The correct answer is D. Conduct a thorough review of all admission criteria and selection methodologies to identify and mitigate any potential biases that could inadvertently disadvantage applicants, ensuring that the process remains meritocratic and equitable. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's strategic goals with the ethical imperative of ensuring fair and transparent admission processes, all within the specific regulatory framework of Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University. The challenge lies in identifying and mitigating potential biases that could compromise the integrity of the selection process, especially when faced with pressure to meet enrollment targets. Careful judgment is crucial to uphold the university's reputation and adhere to its foundational principles. The correct approach involves a systematic review of admission criteria and processes to identify and address any inherent biases that might disadvantage certain applicant groups, even if unintentionally. This aligns with the university's commitment to meritocracy and equal opportunity, as implicitly or explicitly guided by its internal regulations and the broader ethical standards governing educational institutions in Saudi Arabia. Such a review ensures that the strategic planning for enrollment is grounded in fairness and equity, preventing the adoption of policies that could lead to discriminatory outcomes or undermine public trust. An incorrect approach that prioritizes meeting enrollment targets at the expense of a thorough bias review risks violating ethical principles of fairness and potentially contravening internal university policies that mandate equitable treatment of all applicants. This could lead to the selection of less qualified candidates, thereby compromising academic standards and the university's reputation. Another incorrect approach that relies solely on historical data without critically examining the underlying factors that shape that data can perpetuate existing inequalities. If past admission patterns were influenced by societal biases or limited access for certain groups, simply replicating those patterns would reinforce those disadvantages, failing to promote a truly inclusive and merit-based system. A further incorrect approach that focuses on superficial diversity metrics without addressing the root causes of underrepresentation or overrepresentation of certain groups is also problematic. True equity requires a deeper understanding of systemic barriers and the implementation of measures that actively dismantle them, rather than merely creating an appearance of diversity. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a comprehensive assessment of the strategic objectives, a thorough understanding of the relevant university regulations and ethical guidelines, and a proactive approach to identifying and mitigating potential biases. This includes consulting with relevant stakeholders, seeking expert advice if necessary, and prioritizing fairness and integrity in all admission-related decisions. Question 9. The evaluation methodology shows a scenario where an applicant for Imam, Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University's entrance examination has submitted an application with a minor omission in their academic record, specifically a missing official stamp on one of their secondary school certificates. The admissions committee is tasked with deciding whether to proceed with the evaluation of this application. Which of the following actions best aligns with the regulatory framework for Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University's entrance examinations? Option A. Request the applicant to submit a corrected certificate with the official stamp within a specified time frame, as per the university's stated documentation requirements for entrance examinations. Option B. Proceed with the evaluation of the application, assuming the applicant's overall academic profile is strong enough to overlook the minor documentation issue. Option C. Accept the application based on a verbal assurance from the applicant that the certificate is authentic, bypassing the need for official verification. Option D. Reject the application outright due to the incomplete documentation, without providing the applicant an opportunity to rectify the omission. The correct answer is B. Proceed with the evaluation of the application, assuming the applicant's overall academic profile is strong enough to overlook the minor documentation issue. Explanation. The evaluation methodology shows a scenario where a prospective student is seeking admission to Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University. The challenge lies in ensuring that the admission process adheres strictly to the university's established regulatory framework, which is paramount for maintaining academic integrity and fairness. Misinterpreting or deviating from these guidelines can lead to invalid applications, unfair exclusion of deserving candidates, or even legal challenges against the university. The university's entrance exam regulations are designed to create a standardized and equitable assessment environment. The correct approach involves a thorough understanding and strict application of the Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University's entrance examination regulations. This means meticulously reviewing the applicant's submitted documents against the stated eligibility criteria, ensuring all required academic records, identification, and any specific program prerequisites are present and correctly formatted as per the university's official guidelines. Adherence to these regulations is not merely procedural. It is ethically mandated to uphold the principle of equal opportunity for all applicants and to maintain the credibility of the university's admission process. The university's framework likely emphasizes transparency and objective assessment, making strict compliance the only professionally sound path. An incorrect approach would be to overlook minor discrepancies in documentation, such as an incomplete academic transcript or a slightly outdated identification document, with the assumption that the applicant's overall academic merit will compensate. This deviates from the university's explicit requirements and introduces subjective judgment where objective adherence is mandated. Such leniency, even with good intentions, undermines the established regulatory framework and can set a precedent for inconsistent application of rules, potentially leading to accusations of favoritism or unfairness. Another incorrect approach would be to accept an application based on informal assurances from a faculty member or a previous admission cycle's less stringent requirements, ignoring the current, official guidelines. This bypasses the established regulatory channels and compromises the integrity of the admission process, as it relies on unofficial channels rather than the documented and approved procedures. Professionals involved in university admissions must adopt a systematic decision-making process. This begins with a comprehensive review of the relevant university entrance examination regulations. Each application should then be assessed against these regulations objectively and without bias. Any ambiguities or potential issues should be clarified by referring back to the official documentation or seeking guidance from the designated administrative body responsible for admissions policy. The focus should always be on adherence to the established rules, ensuring fairness and transparency for all applicants. Question 10. When evaluating the preparation strategies for the Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University entrance exam, which approach best upholds the principles of academic integrity and the university's regulatory framework for admissions? Option A. Focusing on memorizing answers to past exam questions that may be circulating, assuming this is the most efficient way to demonstrate readiness. Option B. Seeking out and utilizing any available study aids or information, regardless of their official approval status, to maximize the chances of answering exam questions correctly. Option C. Collaborating with other prospective students to share insights and potential exam content, believing that collective knowledge is a valid preparation method. Option D. Relying solely on independently acquired knowledge and skills, utilizing approved study materials, and adhering strictly to all examination rules during preparation and the exam itself. The correct answer is D. Relying solely on independently acquired knowledge and skills, utilizing approved study materials, and adhering strictly to all examination rules during preparation and the exam itself. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire to excel and the ethical imperative to uphold academic integrity. The pressure to perform well in a university entrance exam, especially one as significant as Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic universities, can lead individuals to consider shortcuts. The core of the challenge lies in navigating this pressure while strictly adhering to the examination's regulatory framework, which is designed to ensure fairness and the accurate assessment of a candidate's knowledge and abilities. The correct approach involves a student independently preparing for the exam, utilizing approved study materials and methods, and relying solely on their own understanding and effort during the examination. This aligns with the fundamental principles of academic integrity, which are implicitly and explicitly upheld by the examination's regulations. The university's entrance exam is designed to assess a candidate's readiness based on their acquired knowledge and skills. Any deviation from independent effort undermines this purpose and violates the trust placed in the examination process. Ethically, it is dishonest to present work that is not one's own as if it were. This approach ensures that the assessment is a true reflection of the candidate's capabilities, fostering a fair competitive environment for all applicants. An incorrect approach would be to seek or use unauthorized assistance during preparation or the exam itself. This could manifest as obtaining leaked exam questions, using prohibited study aids during the exam, or collaborating with others in a manner not permitted by the examination rules. Such actions represent a direct violation of the examination's regulatory framework, which strictly prohibits any form of cheating or academic dishonesty. Ethically, these actions are fraudulent and demonstrate a lack of integrity. They not only disadvantage other candidates who are preparing honestly, but also devalue the qualification obtained. Furthermore, engaging in such practices can lead to severe penalties, including disqualification from the exam and potential future academic repercussions. Another incorrect approach would be to misrepresent one's qualifications or background to gain an advantage. This could involve fabricating academic achievements or falsely claiming specific skills or knowledge. While not directly related to the exam content itself, such misrepresentation undermines the entire admission process, which relies on accurate information to select suitable candidates. Ethically, this is a form of deception that violates the principles of honesty and transparency. It creates an unfair advantage and can lead to the admission of individuals who are not genuinely qualified, potentially impacting the academic standards of the university. The professional decision-making process for students facing such challenges should be guided by a strong commitment to ethical conduct and a thorough understanding of the examination's rules. This involves prioritizing honesty, diligence, and self-reliance. Students should focus on legitimate study methods, seek clarification on any ambiguous rules, and understand that the pursuit of knowledge through honest effort is the most valuable outcome. When faced with pressure, it is crucial to remember that academic integrity is paramount, and that long-term success is built on a foundation of ethical behavior. Question 11. The control framework reveals that an influential community leader has contacted the admissions office, strongly recommending a specific applicant for admission to Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University. The applicant's academic record, while satisfactory, does not fully meet the stated minimum requirements for the program. The admissions officer is aware of the leader's significant influence within the community and the potential implications of disregarding their recommendation. What is the most appropriate course of action for the admissions officer to ensure the integrity of the admissions process while managing this situation? Option A. Discreetly seek ways to enhance the applicant's submitted academic credentials or test scores to align them with the admission requirements before formal review. Option B. Prioritize the influential leader's recommendation and instruct the admissions committee to overlook minor discrepancies in the applicant's academic record to ensure admission. Option C. Conduct a thorough and documented review of the applicant's qualifications against the established admission criteria, and if the applicant does not meet the requirements, communicate this decision respectfully, citing the university's policies. Option D. Inform the influential leader that the applicant's qualifications are insufficient and suggest they reapply in a future admission cycle without further consideration of the recommendation. The correct answer is C. Conduct a thorough and documented review of the applicant's qualifications against the established admission criteria, and if the applicant does not meet the requirements, communicate this decision respectfully, citing the university's policies. Explanation. The control framework reveals a common challenge in academic institutions, ensuring the integrity of the admissions process while managing the expectations of influential stakeholders. This scenario is professionally challenging because it pits the university's commitment to fair and merit-based admissions against potential external pressures that could compromise these principles. The need for careful judgment arises from balancing the university's ethical obligations to all applicants with the practical realities of maintaining relationships and adhering to established procedures. The correct approach involves a systematic and documented review of the applicant's qualifications against the stated admission criteria without yielding to undue influence. This upholds the university's commitment to transparency, fairness, and meritocracy, which are foundational ethical principles in academic admissions. Adherence to the university's established admission policies and procedures, as mandated by its internal regulations and potentially by broader educational governance frameworks within Saudi Arabia, ensures that all applicants are evaluated on an equal footing. This approach minimizes the risk of bias and maintains the credibility of the admissions process. An incorrect approach that prioritizes the recommendation from the influential figure without independent verification of the applicant's qualifications would be a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This bypasses the established control framework designed to ensure objectivity and fairness. It introduces the risk of admitting unqualified students, thereby undermining the academic standards of Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University and potentially violating its own admission policies. Such an action could also be seen as a breach of trust and could lead to accusations of favoritism, damaging the university's reputation. Another incorrect approach, which involves attempting to subtly alter the applicant's file or inflate their scores to meet the admission threshold, represents a direct violation of academic integrity and potentially constitutes academic misconduct. This is ethically reprehensible as it involves deception and undermines the entire purpose of a merit-based selection process. It also exposes the university to severe reputational damage and potential disciplinary action from governing educational bodies. A professional decision-making process in such a situation should begin with a clear understanding of the university's admission policies and ethical guidelines. The professional should then assess the nature of the external influence and its potential impact on the integrity of the process. The next step is to engage in a transparent and objective evaluation of the applicant based solely on their documented qualifications. If the applicant does not meet the criteria, the professional should communicate this clearly and respectfully to the influential figure, explaining the university's commitment to its established standards. Documentation of all interactions and decisions is crucial for accountability and to demonstrate adherence to the control framework. Question 12. Analysis of a situation during the Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University entrance exam, where a candidate is observed discreetly looking at notes concealed within their sleeve. What is the most appropriate course of action for a fellow candidate to uphold the integrity of the examination process according to the university's regulatory framework? Option A. Offer the candidate assistance to ensure they understand the questions better. Option B. Directly approach the candidate and ask them to stop. Option C. Ignore the behavior to avoid potential conflict or disruption. Option D. Discreetly inform the examination proctor or supervisor about the observed behavior. The correct answer is D. Discreetly inform the examination proctor or supervisor about the observed behavior. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire to excel and the university's commitment to academic integrity. The pressure to perform well on entrance exams, especially for a prestigious institution like Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University, can lead some students to seek unauthorized assistance. Navigating this requires a strong understanding of the university's specific regulations and ethical guidelines. The correct approach involves prioritizing adherence to the Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University's entrance exam regulations, which strictly prohibit any form of cheating or academic dishonesty. This approach upholds the principles of fairness, meritocracy, and the integrity of the admission process, specifically the university's guidelines, as expected for any reputable academic institution, would mandate reporting any observed or suspected violations to the appropriate examination proctors or administrative officials. This ensures that the examination process remains fair for all candidates and that admission is based on genuine academic merit. An incorrect approach would be to ignore the observed behavior, thereby implicitly condoning academic dishonesty and undermining the fairness of the exam. This failure to act violates the ethical obligation to uphold academic integrity and the specific regulations of the university that require vigilance against cheating. Another incorrect approach would be to directly confront the student during the exam. While seemingly proactive, this could disrupt the examination environment for other students, potentially leading to accusations of interference or bias against the person intervening. It also bypasses the established university procedures for handling such incidents, which typically involve discreet reporting to authorized personnel who are trained to manage these situations impartially and effectively. A third incorrect approach would be to offer assistance to the student, even if done with the intention of helping them understand the material. This constitutes direct involvement in academic dishonesty, a severe violation of university regulations and ethical standards. It compromises the integrity of the examination and unfairly advantages one candidate over others. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a clear understanding of the university's academic integrity policy. When encountering potential violations, the immediate and appropriate action is to discreetly report the observation to the designated examination supervisor or invigilator. This allows the university's established procedures to be followed, ensuring a fair and unbiased resolution while maintaining the integrity of the entrance examination. Question 13. Process analysis reveals that an applicant to Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University has submitted a transcript with a minor formatting error that does not affect the academic content or grades, but deviates from the university's specified submission guidelines for official documents. The admissions committee is reviewing the application. What is the most appropriate course of action according to the university's regulatory framework and ethical admission practices? Option A. Accept the application as is, overlooking the formatting error to expedite the review process and address any potential issues later if they arise. Option B. Request the applicant to resubmit the transcript with the correct formatting within a specified time frame, while temporarily holding the application review. Option C. Forward the application to the academic department for review without mentioning the formatting discrepancy, assuming it is insignificant. Option D. Immediately reject the application due to non-compliance with submission guidelines, regardless of the academic merit or the minor nature of the error. The correct answer is B. Request the applicant to resubmit the transcript with the correct formatting within a specified time frame, while temporarily holding the application review. Explanation. The scenario presents a challenge in balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the practicalities of managing student applications, particularly when dealing with potentially incomplete or misleading information. The core professional challenge lies in ensuring fairness to all applicants while adhering to the Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University's admission regulations and ethical standards. Careful judgment is required to avoid both undue leniency that could compromise standards and undue harshness that could unfairly penalize a student. The correct approach involves a systematic and transparent process of verifying submitted documents, and if discrepancies are found, providing the applicant with a clear opportunity to rectify the situation within defined parameters. This aligns with the principles of due process and fairness inherent in academic admissions. Specifically, it upholds the university's regulatory framework by requiring adherence to submission guidelines and maintaining accurate applicant records. Ethically, it demonstrates a commitment to treating applicants equitably and providing them with a reasonable chance to meet admission criteria, fostering trust in the university's processes. An incorrect approach that involves immediate rejection of the application without further inquiry or opportunity for clarification fails to uphold the principle of fairness. It bypasses the opportunity to understand the context of the discrepancy and potentially penalizes a student for an unintentional error or oversight. This could be seen as a violation of the spirit of the university's admission regulations, which are designed to facilitate admission for qualified candidates. Another incorrect approach that involves accepting the application with known discrepancies without any follow-up or requirement for correction undermines the integrity of the admission process. This could lead to admitting students who do not meet the stated requirements, thereby compromising academic standards and potentially creating future academic challenges for the student. It also sets a precedent that could be perceived as unfair by other applicants who meticulously followed all guidelines. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding the specific admission regulations of Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University regarding document submission and verification. 2. Identifying the nature and severity of the discrepancy. 3. Consulting internal university policies on handling incomplete or questionable applications. 4. Determining if the discrepancy is minor and easily rectifiable or significant enough to warrant further scrutiny. 5. Communicating clearly and professionally with the applicant, outlining the issue and the required steps for resolution. 6. Documenting all communications and decisions made throughout the process. Question 14. Benchmark analysis indicates that Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University's marketing department is preparing new promotional materials for prospective students. Considering the university's commitment to academic integrity and its regulatory framework, which of the following approaches best ensures ethical and compliant recruitment practices? Option A. Emphasizing the unique strengths and potential career advantages of programs, using compelling language and testimonials, while deferring detailed factual verification to the admissions office during the application process. Option B. Focusing on aspirational outcomes and the prestige of the university, with a primary goal of attracting a high volume of applications, assuming that detailed program specifics can be clarified later. Option C. Developing materials that accurately reflect the curriculum, admission requirements, faculty qualifications, and student support services, subject to review and approval by relevant academic departments and the university's compliance office. Option D. Utilizing general industry trends and competitor marketing strategies to craft attractive narratives, with minimal internal review to expedite the launch of the recruitment campaign. Correct answer is A. Emphasizing the unique strengths and potential career advantages of programs, using compelling language and testimonials, while deferring detailed factual verification to the admissions office during the application process. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the ethical and regulatory obligations of an academic institution to its stakeholders, particularly prospective students and the wider community. The core difficulty lies in balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity and accurate representation with the pressures of recruitment and institutional reputation. Careful judgment is required to ensure that promotional materials are both attractive and truthful, adhering to the principles of transparency and fairness. The correct approach involves a thorough review and verification process for all recruitment materials, ensuring they align with the university's official academic offerings. admission criteria, and ethical guidelines, as stipulated by Imam, Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University's internal regulations, and any overarching Saudi Arabian educational standards. This approach upholds the university's integrity by providing prospective students with accurate information, thereby fostering trust and enabling informed decision-making. It aligns with the ethical imperative to avoid misleading advertising and to maintain high standards of academic governance. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on highlighting perceived strengths without substantiating them with verifiable facts, or that exaggerates program outcomes, would constitute a breach of ethical conduct and potentially violate regulations concerning academic advertising and consumer protection within the Saudi Arabian context. Such an approach misleads prospective students, potentially leading to enrollment in programs that do not meet their expectations or qualifications, and damages the university's reputation. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes speed of dissemination over accuracy, by releasing materials without proper internal vetting, risks disseminating misinformation, which is professionally unacceptable and undermines the credibility of the university's admissions process. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes accuracy, transparency, and adherence to institutional policies and relevant national educational guidelines. This involves establishing clear internal review processes, cross-referencing all claims with official university documentation, and seeking input from relevant academic departments and administrative units before any promotional material is finalized and disseminated. The ultimate goal is to ensure that recruitment efforts are both effective and ethically sound, serving the best interests of both the university and its prospective students. Question 15. Research into the Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University's admission process reveals a scenario where a prominent community leader strongly recommends an applicant who, upon initial review, appears to fall slightly below the standard academic threshold for a highly competitive program. The admissions committee is aware of the leader's influence and the potential benefits of a positive relationship. What is the most ethically and regulatorily sound approach for the admissions committee to take? Option A. Conduct a thorough and impartial review of the applicant's qualifications against all established admission criteria, seeking additional objective evidence of suitability if necessary, and making a decision based solely on merit and university policy, regardless of the recommendation. Option B. Prioritize the recommendation of the prominent community leader and admit the applicant, assuming their connection implies a level of potential that warrants consideration beyond standard metrics. Option C. Create a special category or exception for this applicant, adjusting the admission criteria to accommodate them due to the influential recommendation. Option D. Delay the admission decision for this applicant, initiating a prolonged review process to gather more information, hoping the situation resolves itself, or that a justification for admission can be found without explicitly deviating from policy. The correct answer is A. Conduct a thorough and impartial review of the applicant's qualifications against all established admission criteria, seeking additional objective evidence of suitability if necessary, and making a decision based solely on merit and university policy, regardless of the recommendation. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the practicalities of managing student admissions and the potential for external influence. The core difficulty lies in navigating the ethical imperative to uphold fair and transparent admission processes against the pressure to accommodate individuals who may not meet the standard criteria, especially when those individuals have connections. Careful judgment is required to ensure that decisions are based on merit and adherence to established university regulations, rather than personal relationships or perceived influence. The correct approach involves a rigorous and impartial evaluation of all applicants based solely on the established admission criteria and the university's official policies. This upholds the principle of fairness and equal opportunity for all prospective students, ensuring that the admission process is not compromised by external pressures or personal biases. Specifically, adherence to the Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University's admission regulation, which are designed to ensure academic merit and suitability, is paramount. This approach aligns with the ethical duty to maintain the integrity of the academic institution and its admission standards, An incorrect approach that prioritizes the recommendation of a prominent figure without a thorough review of the applicant's qualifications fails to uphold the university's admission standards. This action risks undermining the credibility of the admission process and creating a perception of favoritism, which is ethically unsound and potentially violates university regulations that mandate objective evaluation. Another incorrect approach, which involves creating a special exception or lowering the admission bar for the recommended applicant, directly contravenes the principle of equal treatment and the established admission criteria. This not only compromises academic standards, but also fosters an environment where connections, rather than merit, dictate opportunities, leading to potential resentment among other applicants and damage to the university's reputation. A further incorrect approach, which involves delaying the decision or seeking further information without a clear, objective basis, can be a subtle way to avoid making a principled decision or to appear to be accommodating without actually compromising standards. However, if not handled transparently and in accordance with established procedures, it can lead to uncertainty and a perception of indecisiveness, ultimately failing to address the core ethical dilemma. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve 1. Understanding and strictly adhering to the Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University's admission regulations and policies. 2. Evaluating all applicants, including those with recommendations, against the same objective criteria. 3. Documenting all decisions and the rationale behind them, ensuring transparency. 4. Seeking guidance from relevant university authorities or ethics committees if faced with conflicting pressures or unclear policy interpretations. 5. Prioritizing the integrity of the academic institution and the fairness of the admission process above all else. Question 16. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a prospective applicant to Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University is preparing their application. The applicant has written a draft of their personal statement, but is unsure about its effectiveness. They are considering several options for improving it before submission. Which of the following actions best upholds the principles of academic integrity and fair admission practices as expected by the university? Option A. Paying a professional service to rewrite the personal statement entirely to ensure it is compelling and well-written. Option B. Having a trusted friend review the personal statement for clarity and provide suggestions for minor grammatical corrections and flow improvements. Option C. Using pre-written essay templates found online and adapting them to fit the personal statement requirements. Option D. Submitting the personal statement as originally drafted by a family member who is an accomplished writer. The correct answer is B. Having a trusted friend review the personal statement for clarity and provide suggestions for minor grammatical corrections and flow improvements. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a challenge for an applicant to Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University by requiring them to understand the ethical and regulatory considerations of academic integrity within the context of university admissions. The core difficulty lies in distinguishing between acceptable forms of assistance and academic dishonesty, which is paramount for maintaining the credibility of the university selection process. Applicants must demonstrate an understanding of the university's commitment to fairness and meritocracy. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves the applicant independently completing all sections of the application, including the personal statement and any required essays, without external assistance that could be construed as misrepresentation or plagiarism. This aligns with the fundamental ethical principle of honesty and integrity in academic pursuits, as expected by Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University. The university's regulations and guidelines for entrance exams implicitly or explicitly prohibit any form of cheating or misrepresentation. By submitting an application that solely reflects their own knowledge, skills, and experiences, the applicant upholds these standards and demonstrates their suitability for admission based on genuine merit. Incorrect approach is analysis. Submitting an application that includes essays or personal statements written by a third party, even if presented as the applicant's own work, constitutes academic dishonesty and a violation of the university's admission policies. This misrepresents the applicant's abilities and is a form of plagiarism. Seeking extensive editing or rewriting of personal statements by professional services that go beyond minor grammatical corrections and fundamentally alter the content or voice of the applicant's original work also crosses the line into misrepresentation. While seeking advice on clarity is acceptable, outsourcing the core writing process undermines the purpose of the personal statement as a reflection of the applicant's individual thoughts and experiences. Relying on pre-written answers or templates for essay questions, even if adapted, fails to demonstrate original thought and can be considered a form of academic dishonesty, as it does not reflect the applicant's genuine understanding or ability to articulate their ideas independently. Professional reasoning. Professionals in academic admissions, and indeed applicants themselves, must adhere to principles of honesty, integrity, and fairness. When faced with application processes, the decision-making framework should prioritize transparency and authenticity. This involves understanding the specific rules and expectations of the institution, such as Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University, and ensuring that all submitted materials are a true and accurate representation of the applicant's own work and capabilities. The focus should always be on demonstrating genuine merit, rather than seeking an unfair advantage through deceptive means. Question 17. Comparative studies suggest that university entrance examinations are critical gateways for academic progression. In the context of Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University, if an invigilator observes a candidate exhibiting behavior that strongly suggests potential academic dishonesty during the entrance exam, what is the most appropriate course of action? Strictly adhering to the university's regulatory framework for entrance examinations. Option A. Immediately disqualify the candidate and confiscate their examination materials based on the invigilator's observation. Option B. Discreetly inform the candidate that their behavior is suspicious and advise them to cease such actions to avoid consequences. Option C. Document the observed behavior meticulously, report it to the designated examination committee or authority within the university, and await their formal instructions for further action, ensuring the candidate is allowed to complete the exam unless instructed otherwise. Option D. Proceed with the examination as normal and address the potential misconduct after the exam results have been finalized and released. The correct answer is A. Immediately disqualify the candidate and confiscate their examination materials based on the invigilator's observation. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the ethical obligation to uphold academic integrity and the university's commitment to fair assessment. The challenge lies in balancing the need to address potential academic misconduct with the rights of the student to a fair process. The university's regulatory framework, as it pertains to entrance exams, mandates strict adherence to rules designed to ensure a level playing field and the accurate evaluation of candidates' abilities. The correct approach involves a systematic and documented process of investigation, adhering strictly to Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University's established procedures for handling suspected academic dishonesty. This approach prioritizes fairness, due process, and the integrity of the examination system. It requires gathering evidence, providing the student with an opportunity to respond, and making a decision based on established university policies and the evidence presented. This aligns with the university's commitment to academic excellence and ethical conduct, ensuring that all candidates are assessed fairly and that the validity of the entrance examination is maintained. An incorrect approach of immediate disqualification without investigation fails to uphold the principle of due process. It presumes guilt without affording the student the opportunity to explain their actions or present mitigating circumstances, which is a violation of fundamental fairness and potentially university regulations regarding disciplinary procedures. Another incorrect approach of ignoring the suspicion due to the high stakes of the entrance exam compromises the integrity of the assessment process. It suggests a willingness to overlook potential misconduct for the sake of expediency or to avoid difficult decisions, which undermines the university's reputation and the credibility of its admissions. A third incorrect approach of consulting external, non-university sanctioned individuals for advice on how to proceed bypasses the university's internal governance and established protocols for academic integrity matters. This can lead to inconsistent or biased decision-making and may not align with the specific regulatory framework governing the university's entrance examinations. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the suspected violation and the relevant university policies. This is followed by a thorough, objective investigation documented at each stage. The student must be informed of the allegations and given a fair opportunity to present their case. Decisions should be made based on the evidence and in accordance with established procedures, ensuring transparency and fairness throughout the process. Question 18. Compliance review shows that the admissions committee at Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University is under pressure to meet its annual enrollment targets. A senior faculty member has strongly recommended several candidates who do not fully meet the published academic entry requirements, citing their potential for future success and their connections. The committee is considering how to handle these recommendations to balance enrollment needs with admission integrity. Option A. Relax the admission standards for the recommended candidates to ensure enrollment targets are met, prioritizing institutional needs over strict adherence to academic criteria. Option B. Reject all candidates recommended by senior faculty to avoid any perception of favoritism, regardless of their qualifications. Option C. Strictly adhere to the published academic entry requirements for all candidates, including those recommended by the senior faculty member, ensuring a fair and merit-based admission process. Option D. Create a special review process for candidates recommended by senior faculty, allowing for their admission even if they fall slightly below the standard requirements. Correct answer is C. Strictly adhere to the published academic entry requirements for all candidates, including those recommended by the senior faculty member, ensuring a fair and merit-based admission process. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's academic mission and the need to adhere to ethical recruitment practices. The pressure to meet enrollment targets can inadvertently lead to compromises in the integrity of the admissions process. Careful judgment is required to balance institutional goals with the ethical obligations to prospective students and the university's reputation. The correct approach involves a thorough and impartial evaluation of all applicants based on established academic criteria and university policies. This upholds the principle of fairness and equal opportunity, ensuring that admission decisions are merit-based and free from undue influence. Adherence to the university's stated admission criteria and ethical guidelines is paramount, reflecting a commitment to academic excellence and integrity. This approach aligns with the ethical responsibilities of educational institutions to maintain transparent and equitable admission processes, fostering trust among applicants and the wider community. An approach that prioritizes meeting enrollment targets by relaxing admission standards for certain applicants, even if they are recommended by influential individuals, represents a significant ethical failure. This undermines the meritocratic basis of admissions and can lead to the enrollment of students who may not be adequately prepared for the academic rigor of the university, potentially impacting their success and the overall academic quality. Furthermore, it creates an unfair advantage for some applicants over others, violating principles of equity. Another incorrect approach is to dismiss applications from individuals recommended by influential figures outright, without proper consideration. While it is crucial to avoid undue influence, a complete disregard for such recommendations, without a fair review process, could be seen as unprofessional and potentially discriminatory. The university should have a clear policy on how to handle such recommendations, ensuring they are considered within the established framework without overriding objective assessment. Finally, an approach that involves creating special admission categories for individuals based on external influence, rather than academic merit, is ethically unsound. This practice can lead to perceptions of favoritism and corruption, damaging the university's reputation and eroding public trust. It deviates from the core mission of providing education based on academic preparedness and potential. Professionals in university admissions should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes transparency, fairness, and adherence to established policies. This involves 1. Understanding and strictly applying the university's admission criteria. 2. Maintaining an objective and impartial stance throughout the evaluation process. 3. Documenting all decisions and the rationale behind them. 4. Seeking guidance from senior management or ethics committees when faced with complex or ethically ambiguous situations. 5. Recognizing and mitigating potential conflicts of interest. Question 19. Regulatory review indicates that during the Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University entrance examination, a student approaches the invigilator requesting to take the exam in a separate room due to a personal family emergency that has caused them significant distress. The invigilator is aware of the student's generally good academic standing, but has no specific authorization to grant such a request outside of pre-approved accommodations. What is the most appropriate course of action for the invigilator? Option A. Advise the student to withdraw from the examination and reapply for a future session, citing the university's strict adherence to examination protocols. Option B. Politely decline the request. Explain that examination regulations must be followed uniformly for all candidates, and offer to document the student's request for review by the examination committee after the exam. Option C. Discuss the student's situation with other invigilators to collectively decide on the best course of action. Option D. Grant the student's request to take the exam in a separate room to accommodate their distress as a gesture of empathy. The correct answer is B. Politely decline the request. Explain that examination regulations must be followed uniformly for all candidates, and offer to document the student's request for review by the examination committee after the exam. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the ethical obligation to maintain academic integrity and uphold the university's standards. The student's request, while seemingly a minor accommodation, directly conflicts with the established examination regulations of Imam, Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University. The core of the challenge lies in balancing empathy for a student's personal circumstances with the non-negotiable requirement to adhere to examination rules designed to ensure fairness and validity for all candidates. A careful judgment is required to avoid setting a precedent that could undermine the integrity of future examinations. The correct approach involves upholding the university's examination regulations by politely but firmly declining the request and explaining the rationale behind the strict adherence to these rules. This aligns with the ethical principles of fairness and impartiality, ensuring that all students are assessed under the same conditions. Specifically, Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University's entrance examination guidelines, which are designed to ensure a standardized and equitable assessment process, would prohibit any deviation from the prescribed examination procedures. Allowing an exception for one student, regardless of the reason, would violate these regulations and compromise the integrity of the examination. An incorrect approach would be to grant the student's request for a separate examination room without proper authorization or a valid, documented reason that is explicitly permitted by the university's examination policy. This action would represent a direct violation of the university's examination regulations, which mandate uniform testing conditions for all applicants. Such a deviation could be perceived as favoritism, undermining the fairness of the entrance exam, and potentially leading to challenges from other students who were not offered similar accommodations. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the request and proceed with the examination as scheduled without addressing the student's concern. This demonstrates a lack of professionalism and disregard for student welfare, failing to uphold the duty of care expected of examination invigilators. A third incorrect approach would be to discuss the student's personal situation with other students or staff not directly involved in the examination administration. This would be a breach of confidentiality and a violation of professional conduct. A professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a clear understanding of the relevant university regulations and ethical guidelines. When faced with a request that appears to conflict with these, the professional should first consult the official examination policy. If the policy is unclear or does not explicitly cover the situation, the next step is to seek guidance from the designated university authority responsible for examination. The decision should always be based on the established rules and principles of fairness, transparency, and academic integrity, prioritizing the integrity of the examination process above all else. Question 20. Consider a scenario where an instructor at Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University suspects a student of plagiarism in a submitted assignment. The instructor has identified significant similarities between the student's work and an online source, but has not yet directly communicated with the student about this suspicion. According to the university's regulatory framework for academic integrity, what is the most appropriate immediate step for the instructor to take? Option A. Directly confront the student with the evidence and demand an explanation or admission of guilt to resolve the matter quickly. Option B. Ignore the suspicion to avoid potential conflict or negative repercussions for the student and the course. Option C. Report the suspected plagiarism to the relevant academic integrity committee or department head, providing the evidence of similarity, and await further guidance on the investigation process. Option D. Make a preliminary judgment of guilt and assign a failing grade for the assignment, informing the student of the penalty. Correct answer is C. Report the suspected plagiarism to the relevant academic integrity committee or department head, providing the evidence of similarity, and await further guidance on the investigation process. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the ethical obligation to uphold academic integrity and the university's commitment to fair assessment. The challenge lies in balancing the need to address potential academic misconduct with the principle of due process for the student. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any action taken is fair, consistent with Imam Muhammad ibn Saud Islamic University's regulations, and avoids prejudging the student's intent. The correct approach involves a structured, evidence-based investigation that adheres strictly to the university's established procedures for handling academic integrity concerns. This approach is right because it prioritizes fairness and due process, ensuring that the student has an opportunity to respond to any allegations. Specifically, it aligns with the university's regulatory framework, which mandates a formal process for investigating suspected misconduct, including gathering evidence, notifying the student, and providing a hearing or review opportunity. This upholds the ethical principle of justice and prevents arbitrary disciplinary actions. An incorrect approach that involves immediate disciplinary action without a thorough investigation is ethically and regulatorily flawed. This bypasses the university's established procedures, denying the student their right to a fair hearing and potentially leading to an unjust outcome. It violates the principle of due process, a cornerstone of academic and ethical governance. Another incorrect approach, which is to ignore the suspected misconduct due to a desire to avoid conflict or potential negative publicity, is also professionally unacceptable. This failure to act undermines the university's commitment to academic integrity and creates an environment where misconduct may go unchecked, eroding the value of the degrees awarded. It is an abdication of professional responsibility and a breach of ethical duty to the institution and its students. A third incorrect approach, which is to confront the student informally and demand an admission of guilt without following established procedures, is problematic. While it might seem like a direct way to address the issue, it lacks the formal safeguards necessary for a fair investigation. It can be perceived as accusatory and intimidating, potentially leading to coerced admissions or a denial of the student's rights. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Recognizing the potential ethical or regulatory issue. 2. Consulting the relevant university policies and procedures for academic integrity. 3. Gathering objective evidence without prejudging the situation. 4. Initiating the formal investigation process as outlined by the university. 5. Ensuring the student is informed of the allegations and their rights. 6. Providing a fair opportunity for the student to present their case. 7. Making a decision based on the evidence and in accordance with university regulations.